Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The moment the lights dimmed, something unspoken shifted between them, a quiet, trembling edge where trust and desire blurred into something far more dangerous. She could feel it in the way her husband's fingers lingered just a second too long on her wrist, in the way his breath brushed against her ear as if he were about to confess a secret or surrender to one. It wasn't just a game anymore. It was something deeper, something neither of them had fully named. There had always been love between them, steady, grounding, familiar. But lately, beneath that love, something restless had been growing. A curiosity. A question neither dared to ask out loud, yet both silently carried. That night, it finally found its voice not in words, but in choices. In glances exchanged with others who understood without explanation. In the quiet agreement that boundaries, just for a moment, could be explored rather than feared. She didn't know exactly when anticipation turned into surrender. Maybe it was when she let herself trust the sound of her husband's voice over everything else. Maybe it was the way he stayed so close, guiding her not with control, but with permission, as if he needed her courage to unlock something within himself. His whispers weren't commands, they were invitations. Invitations to let go of hesitation, of identity, of certainty. Around them, the air felt heavier, charged with the presence of others, strangers, yet not entirely unfamiliar. There was a strange intimacy in that shared silence, in the understanding that everyone there was crossing a line they had once sworn they never would. And yet, no one stepped back. What surprised her most wasn't the situation itself, it was how safe she felt within it. Not because everything was known, but because it wasn't. Because her husband was still there, grounding her in a way that made the unknown feel almost beautiful. And as his voice softened, barely more than a breath against her skin, she realized this wasn't just about desire. It was about trust pushed to its limit. And just as she let herself fall into that realization, something shifted again, something that would change the way they saw each other forever. For a brief second, time seemed to pause in the space between his breath and her next inhale. She felt it, that subtle shift, like the air itself had grown heavier, thicker with everything neither of them had said. His presence was so close it almost felt like a touch, even when he wasn't quite there. And yet, it was enough. More than enough. "Are you okay?" he whispered, his voice softer now, less certain than before. The question lingered between them, fragile. She nodded instinctively, then let out a quiet breath that trembled more than she expected. "I think I am," she replied, though her voice carried a question of its own. Because she wasn't just answering him. She was answering herself. There was a moment, small, almost invisible, where her fingers flexed against the soft restraint at her wrists. Not to pull away, not to escape, but to feel. To remind herself that she was still grounded, still choosing this. That everything unfolding around her wasn't something happening to her, but something she had stepped into. And somehow, that made it even more intense. "I'm right here," he murmured again, closer this time. She could feel the warmth of his forehead near hers, not quite touching, but hovering at the edge of connection. "You don't have to go anywhere you don't want to." His words should have calmed her. Instead, they stirred something deeper. Because the truth was, she did want to go there. That was the part she hadn't fully admitted, even to herself. Her lips parted slightly, as if she might say something, but no words came. Instead, she tilted her head just enough that their foreheads finally met, a soft, grounding contact that sent a quiet shiver through her entire body. In that touch, there was history, familiarity, love. But beneath it, something new, something uncertain, something that made her heart race in a way that felt almost unfamiliar, even with him. Behind her closed eyes, her thoughts flickered, images, questions, flashes of doubt tangled with curiosity. She was aware of everything, the stillness in the room, the presence of others just beyond her immediate world, the way her husband's breathing had changed ever so slightly, like he was feeling it too. "That edge. That pull. Tell me if you want to stop," he said quietly. But there was something in his tone, something unspoken, that made the words feel heavier than they sounded. As if stopping wasn't what either of them truly feared. It was what might happen if they didn't. Her answer didn't come right away. Instead, she leaned in just a fraction closer, her voice barely a whisper against the space between them. "I'm still here." And somehow, those 3 words carried everything. Permission, hesitation, and the beginning of something neither of them could take back. The silence that followed her words wasn't empty, it was full. Full of everything waiting to surface, everything they had held back for so long that it now pressed against the edges of the moment, demanding to be felt. "I know you are," he whispered, but his voice carried a weight it hadn't before. Not reassurance this time, recognition. She felt it instantly. Something in him had shifted too. His forehead remained against hers, but now there was a subtle tension in the contact, like he was holding himself there with effort. As if pulling away might be easier, safer. Her chest rose slowly, deliberately, as she tried to steady the storm building inside her. This wasn't just about curiosity anymore. It wasn't just about pushing boundaries or exploring something new. This was about them. And that realization made everything sharper. More fragile. Her fingers curled again, this time not just to feel the present, but to anchor herself against the rush of thoughts threatening to overwhelm her. What are we doing? The question flickered through her mind, but it didn't come with panic, it came with awe. Because beneath the uncertainty, there was something undeniably real. "I can hear you thinking," he murmured softly, almost with a hint of a smile. But there was vulnerability in it, like he was standing at the same edge, looking down into the same unknown. She let out a quiet breath, one that trembled just enough to betray her. "Then you know I'm not sure where this ends." His response didn't come immediately. Instead, his hand moved slowly, carefully, until it hovered near her arm, not quite touching. The hesitation in that small gesture said more than any words could. "I don't either," he admitted. And there it was. The truth. Unpolished. Unprotected. For a moment, everything else, the room, the presence of others, the quiet hum of anticipation, faded into the background. It was just them again. 2 people standing at the edge of something neither could fully define, yet neither could walk away from. Her head tilted slightly, her blindfold heightening every other sense. She could feel the space between them like a living thing, charged, electric, waiting. "Then why does it feel like we're about to cross something we can't come back from?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. This time, his hand did touch her, light, grounding, real. "Maybe," he said slowly, "because we already have." Her breath caught. Not from fear, but from recognition. Because deep down, she knew he was right. This wasn't about a single moment. It was about everything leading up to it, every unspoken thought, every shared glance, every quiet question they had both been too afraid to ask. And now, standing here in the middle of it, there was no clear line between who they had been and who they were becoming. His words didn't fade, they lingered, settling into her chest like something both heavy and clarifying. "We already have." For a moment, she stopped breathing altogether. Not because she was afraid, but because something inside her had just been named, and she didn't know how to hold it yet. Her instinct was to lean closer, to close the space between them completely, to find certainty in his presence the way she always had. But something held her there, suspended in that fragile distance. Not doubt, but awareness. Because for the first time, she felt it clearly. This wasn't just their moment anymore. The room hadn't disappeared. It had been waiting. A subtle sound, a shift of weight, the faintest exhale from somewhere behind her, broke through the quiet. And suddenly, the reality of the others returned, no longer distant, no longer abstract. Present. Witnessing. Part of this unfolding whether she fully understood it or not. Her breath caught again, but this time differently. Not inward. Outward. She turned her face just slightly, not enough to break contact with him completely, but enough to acknowledge the space beyond him. The unknown she had agreed to step into, now looking back at her. "I can feel them," she whispered, her voice barely steady. His hand tightened just a fraction on her arm, not to restrain, but to anchor. "I know," he said. But there was something new in his tone. Not just vulnerability. Conflict. And that's when she realized he wasn't just guiding her through this. He was struggling too. Her brow softened, her expression shifting as understanding deepened. "This wasn't just for me, was it?" The question landed gently, but it carried weight. This time, he didn't answer right away. And in that silence, everything grew louder. The meaning. The truth. The possibility that this night wasn't just about her surrender, but his. Finally, his forehead pressed fully against hers, as if he needed that contact to steady himself. "I didn't know how to ask you," he admitted quietly. "Not like this. Not in words." Her heart tightened, not from hurt, but from the raw honesty in it. "And now?" she asked. A pause. A breath. "Now I don't know if I'm asking or risking everything." That was the moment the ground beneath them shifted again. Because suddenly, this wasn't about curiosity or exploration. It was about choice. About whether love could stretch, or if it would fracture. Her lips parted, but no answer came. Instead, her hand moved slow, deliberate, brushing lightly against his wrist, a silent acknowledgement that she felt it too. The weight. The pull. The danger of wanting something they might not fully understand. And just as the tension reached its peak, a voice, soft but unmistakably close, broke the moment. Not his. Not hers. But someone else stepping just a little closer into their story. The voice didn't rush in, it arrived gently, almost respectfully, as if aware it was stepping into something fragile. "You can stop," it said softly. "At any moment." She stilled. Not because of the words themselves, but because of how they were said. There was no pressure in them. No expectation. Only space. And in that space, something inside her shifted for the final time. Her breath slowed. Her body, once caught between tension and surrender, softened into something more grounded, more certain. The blindfold no longer felt like a symbol of the unknown, but of trust she had chosen, moment by moment. Her fingers moved again, this time not testing, not questioning, but deciding. Slowly, she turned back toward her husband, their closeness no longer uncertain, but intentional. She could feel him waiting, not for permission, but for truth. "I thought this was about letting go," she said quietly. Her voice had changed. It carried clarity now. "But it's not." A pause. "It's about knowing where I don't disappear." The words settled between them, steady and undeniable. For a second, he didn't respond, not because he didn't understand, but because he did. Completely. His hand, still resting on her arm, softened, no longer holding, just touching. Present, but free. And in that small shift, everything resolved. Because she wasn't choosing the moment. She was choosing herself within it. And somehow, that made everything else fall into place. "I don't need to go further to prove anything," she continued, her voice calm but deeply felt. "Not to you. Not to me." Behind them, the room seemed to exhale, the quiet acknowledgement of a boundary not broken, but understood. And then came the final twist. His forehead rested against hers once more, but this time, there was no tension left in it. Only something softer. Something almost relieved. "I didn't bring you here to lose you," he confessed, barely above a whisper. "I think I just needed to know we were strong enough not to." Her breath caught, not from uncertainty this time, but from the unexpected tenderness in his truth. All along, this hadn't been about testing limits. It had been about finding them. Together. A quiet tear slipped from beneath the edge of her blindfold, tracing down her cheek, not from fear, not from regret, but from the overwhelming clarity of what they had just faced without breaking. Her hand found his, fingers intertwining with quiet certainty. "I'm still here," she whispered again. And this time, it wasn't a question. It was a promise. The room felt different now. Not because anything physical had changed, the soft lighting still glowed, the quiet presence of others remained respectfully distant, but because something within them had settled. The tension that once filled the air had dissolved into a calm, almost sacred stillness. She slowly lifted the blindfold, not in urgency, but in intention. The world returned gently. Shadows softened into shapes, and shapes into people, but her eyes didn't search the room. They found him first, as if they always had. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. There was a quiet understanding passing between them, something deeper than relief, stronger than curiosity. It was the recognition of having stood at the edge of something uncertain and choosing, together, how far to go. Around them, the others began to shift subtly, not awkwardly, not abruptly, but with a shared awareness that the moment had reached its natural end. No tension, no disappointment, just respect. And that, too, mattered. She sat up a little straighter, her hand still loosely wrapped in his. "I thought I needed to explore something outside of us," she said softly, her voice thoughtful rather than heavy. "But I think I just needed to understand what we already have." He smiled, not widely, not dramatically, but in that quiet way that comes when something true lands exactly where it should. "We didn't lose anything tonight," he replied. She shook her head gently. "No, we found the edges of it." Their fingers tightened, not out of fear, but connection. And in that connection, there was something new, not because they had changed who they were, but because they had seen each other more clearly than before. Without illusion. Without assumption. Just truth. The kind that doesn't always come easily. As they stood to leave, her gaze lingered for a moment, not on the room, not on the others, but on the feeling itself. The quiet courage it had taken. The trust it required. The way love had stretched and held. Outside, the air felt cooler. Simpler. Real. She leaned into him slightly as they walked, her head brushing his shoulder, a small, familiar gesture that now carried a deeper meaning. No words were needed anymore. Because some moments don't change everything loudly. They change it quietly in ways that last longer. And as they stepped forward together, one truth remained, steady and certain: love isn't about how far you're willing to go, but how deeply you're willing to stay.